I am the monster the breathing men would kill. I am Dracula.
In this movie brew, we're going to take a look at Bram Stoker's Dracula, starring Gary Oldman as Dracula, Winona Ryder as Mina Harker, Anthony Hopkins as Abraham Van Helsing, Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker, Richard E. Grant as Jack Seward, Cary Elwes as Sir Arthur Holmwood, Billy Campbell as Quincy Morris, Sadie Frost as Lucy Westenra, Tom Waits as Renfield, and directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Winona Ryder brought a script written by James V. Hart to Francis Ford Coppola. Coppola had agreed to meet with Ryder so that he could clear the air with her and show her that there was no hard feelings for her late withdrawal from Coppola's film The Godfather Part 3. Coppola read the script and liked the sensual elements that were in it, and said that he wanted portions of the film to resemble an erotic dream. Coppola, who had cost overruns on such previous films as Apocalypse Now and One from the Heart, was determined to make sure that this film was finished on time and on budget. He chose to work on sound stages as opposed to filming too much on location as to avoid potential issues with uncooperative weather. He also chose to spend a significant amount of the budget on costumes in order to showcase the actors, who he referred to as the jewels of the film. He had asked costume designers to come up with designs that were weird, later recalling, "Weird became a code word for let's not do formula. Give me something that either comes from the research or that comes from your own nightmares." I gave them paintings, and I gave them drawings, and I talked to them about how I thought the imagery could work. Coppola also chose to storyboard the entire film. He then took these storyboards and chopped them together with scenes from the French version of Beauty and the Beast that Jean Cocteau directed in 1946. There were also paintings by Gustav Klimt, among others, that he made into a rough animatic of the film. Greta Seacat was brought in to coach Sadie Frost and Winona Ryder for their erotic scenes, because Coppola felt uncomfortable discussing sexuality with the young actresses. Gary Oldman didn't really have much of a problem, though. Coppola had requested that Oldman speak seductively to Sadie Frost from off-camera while they were filming the scene where Frost was writhing in bed in ecstasy. Winona Ryder was also kind of off-put by Oldman's intense acting style at times. The two eventually had a falling out during filming and had difficulty working together afterwards. Coppola said they got along, and then one day they absolutely didn't get along. None of us were privy to what happened. Ryder was quoted later as saying that she felt there was a danger while working with Oldman due to his method acting style. The two eventually did make up, with Winona Ryder claiming later on that they were good friends and that most of the drama was just teenage bullshit. Probably the most interesting thing about this movie is for it to stay on budget. Coppola insisted on not using any contemporary special effects techniques of the time, which basically meant no CGI. He wanted to use old school techniques from the early day of filmmaking, and he also felt that by doing this it would be more appropriate given the film's period setting also coinciding with the origin of film. He had hired a standard visual effects team, but they told him that what he wanted to achieve was not possible without the use of modern digital technology. Coppola fired them and replaced them with his son Roman Coppola, which was a bold move, Cotton, because it didn't work out so well when he hired his daughter in The Godfather 3. All of the visual effects seen in the film were created without the use of optical effects or CGI. On-set in-camera methods were used, such as rear projection with actors placed in front of a screen with an image projected behind them, or using multiple exposures, such as shooting a slate, then rewinding the film through the camera and shooting the foreground slate on the same piece of film, while using matting techniques to ensure that only the desired areas of the film were exposed. Forced perspectives were combined with miniatures or matte paintings with full-size elements, and they also created distorted views of reality by doing simple things such as having the camera film while upside down or at odd angles to create the effect of objects defying the laws of physics. The film opens in 1462 with Vlad Dracula returning from a victory against the Turks to find out that his wife Elizabeta has committed suicide after getting false reports of his death. The priest tells Dracula that Elizabeta's soul is condemned because of her suicide, and this just enrages Dracula. He renounces his faith and desecrates the chapel, rather spectacularly, before his declaration that he will rise from the grave to avenge Elizabeta with all the powers of darkness. He then does... I'll just show you. Jump to 1897, and solicitor Jonathan Harker is to take on a client from his colleague Renfield, who has basically lost his shit and got locked up. The client is a Transylvanian count by the name of Dracula. Harker travels to Transylvania, and we get this awesome shot on the train while Harker is reading Dracula's letter.
Welcome to the Carpathians. I am anxiously expecting you. At the Borgo Pass, my carriage will await you and bring you to me. I trust your journey from London has been a happy one, and that you will enjoy your stay in my beautiful land.
Harker is to arrange Dracula's real estate purchases in London, including Carfax Abbey. During his time there, he learns that Dracula is quick to anger at times.
Oh, yes.
It is no laughing matter.
Rather eccentric.
A foul bowl of men's vanity. Perhaps you should grow a beard.
And things aren't as they seem. Dracula discovers a picture of Harker's fiancée, Mina. He believes her to be Elizabetha reincarnated. Dracula tells Harker he is to stay with him for a month, and he will not accept no for an answer. During his time there, Harker wanders the castle against Dracula's warnings and comes upon Dracula's vampire brides. Harker realizes he is Dracula's prisoner, and when the Count leaves, Harker is to be fed upon by the brides. Upon arriving in London during a fierce storm, and having killed the crew of the Demeter, Dracula assumes the form of a wolf-like creature, before finding Mina's friend Lucy, whom Mina happens to be staying with at the time. He seduces Lucy and eventually bites her. Lucy's health deteriorates rather quickly, and she starts exhibiting strange behavior. This prompts her former suitors, Quincy Morris and Dr. Seward, and also her fiancé Arthur Holmwood, to summon Abraham Van Helsing.
I am at a loss, I admit. I've taken the liberty of cabling Abraham Van Helsing, the metaphysician philosopher.
Sounds like a goddamn witch doctor to me, Jack.
Van Helsing knows more about obscure diseases than any man in the world. He's my teacher and mentor.
Van Helsing correctly diagnoses Lucy as having being bitten by a vampire and that she is turning. Meanwhile, Dracula, who can walk around in daylight hours at the cost of some of his power, now appears young.
See me. See me now.
He meets Mina and charms her. Harker, however, has escaped the castle and is recovering in a convent and has sent word to Mina, who quickly travels to Romania to marry him. This enrages Dracula and he kills Lucy, which finishes her transformation into a vampire. Van Helsing takes Holmwood, Seward, and Morris to Lucy's crypt, where he informs them that they must drive a stake through her heart and decapitate her. Believing him to be mad, the three men open the coffin and find it empty.
Where is she?
Where is she? What are you doing with her?
She lives beyond the grace of God, a wanderer in the outer darkness. She's vampire, Nosferatu. These creatures do not die like the bee after the first sting, but instead grow strong and become immortal once infected by another Nosferatu.
Only for Lucy to return to the crypt with a child that she intended to feed off of. This event is later explained to Mina and Harker by Van Helsing during a dinner scene, and it's a nice bit of dark humor in the film that's otherwise very serious.
Doctor,
Yeah?
how did Lucy die? Was she in great pain?
Yeah, she was in great pain. Then we cut off her head and drove a stake through her heart and burned it, and then she found peace.
Doctor! Please.
After having returned to London, Harker informs Van Helsing of the events at the castle. Van Helsing and Harker lead the others to Carfax Abbey, where they destroy Dracula's boxes of soil that he needs to be able to regain his strength while he slumbers. Dracula, meanwhile, enters the asylum and kills Renfield for warning Mina of his presence, then proceeds to visit Mina, who is staying in Seward's quarters while the others are out hunting the Count. They converse, and she forgives him for killing Lucy and the other things that he has done, and she admits that she still loves him, and at her insistence, Dracula starts the process of turning Mina into a vampire. Van Helsing and the others burst into the room, and in one of the best creature effects in this film, and probably one of my favorite creature effects in a movie in general, Dracula confronts them and eventually claims Mina as his bride and escapes.
I was betrayed. Look what your God has done to me.
No, your war with God is over. You must pay for your crime. Christ compels you.
He is now my bride.
Using the mental link between Mina and Dracula, Van Helsing hypnotizes her and learns that Dracula has set sail for home. They depart in hopes to intercept him in Varna, but Dracula also uses this mental link to evade them. They eventually split up, and Van Helsing and Mina travel the Borgo Pass while the other hunters try to stop the gypsies that are transporting the Count. While camping near the castle, Van Helsing and Mina are approached by Dracula's brides after sunset. Mina is initially frightened by the brides, before she eventually succumbs to their chanting and tries to seduce Van Helsing so that she can feed off of him. Before she can do that, though, Van Helsing puts a communion wafer on her forehead and burns her. He then surrounds them with a ring of fire to protect them from the brides, and upon daybreak, Van Helsing infiltrates the castle and beheads the brides. As sunset approaches, the gypsy carriage carrying Dracula arrives, with the hunters closely behind. Upon arriving, the hunters and the gypsies begin to fight, with Morris being stabbed in the back during the fight. As the sun drops below the horizon, Dracula bursts out of his coffin. Mina rushes to Dracula's defense, and Homewood tries to attack, but Van Helsing and Harker stop him, allowing Mina to retreat with Dracula into the chapel. The hunters return to Morris's side, where he dies from his wounds. Inside the chapel, though, where Dracula's story began, he lies dying, and him and Mina share a kiss as candles begin to light and the cross repairs itself. Dracula, who is in the form of an ancient demon, then regains his youthful appearance again, and asks Mina to give him peace. She pushes the knife through Dracula's heart, and as he dies, the mark on her forehead from Van Helsing's communion wafer disappears, freeing her of Dracula's curse. She decapitates him before looking to the fresco of Dracula and Elizabeth reunited in the afterlife. And that was Bram Stoker's Dracula, and it was awesome. It's a big departure from the film depictions of Dracula that people were used to at the time, and this film was far more faithful to the source material than other Dracula movies. Gary Oldman stands out as probably the best actor in the film, given the different makeups and the looks that he had to endure for the role, even going so far as to shave the front of his head to bring his natural hairline back further to better match the historical depictions of Vlad Tepes. Anthony Hopkins is brilliant, as always, as the eccentric Van Helsing. Seriously, the nonchalant explanation of how they had to kill Lucy is up there for me in great Anthony Hopkins scenes, along with just about every scene that he was in from Silence of the Lambs. Hopkins and Oldman are always a win for me, and I enjoy both actors in any role that they may play. The rest of the cast varies from great to serviceable to what the fuck were they thinking. Look, I like Keanu Reeves, but this wasn't a role for him. Reeves is an actor that needs to be in a role that plays to his strengths, and while future movies like The Matrix and John Wick did this in spades, the role of Jonathan Harker was not a role that was within the realm of Reeves' acting abilities at the time. Even Winona Ryder, who's generally pretty good in the movies that she's in, seems to have some trouble pulling off the English accent fairly consistently. And while her work on the film isn't as bad as Reeves, she's still a weak link in the film for me. While Ryder and Reeves did not ruin the experience for me, it can borderline for others. And I've even met some people and talked to some people that claim that they cannot watch the film because of them. The film was criminally skipped over for an Academy Award nomination for Best Visual Effects, and whether you like this film or not, you cannot argue that with the methods used to achieve what Coppola wanted, it looks amazing. Visually, the film has aged incredibly well because of this. It doesn't suffer from dated CGI or optical effects. This is a great movie, and if you can get past Keanu Reeves and, in my opinion, Winona Ryder's weak performances, especially when sharing scenes with people like Gary Oldman and Anthony Hopkins, I highly recommend you give this movie a watch. For the very least, just to see the incredible performance from Gary Oldman and some amazing visuals with an old-school mentality and technology.
You think you can destroy me with your